Welcome to In Conversation with Brad Wendes. Once again this week, it's me, solo. I've got a couple of interesting stories to tell you. Don't worry, I've got some fascinating guests coming up in the next couple of weeks, but due to some scheduling issues, we're going to be recording tomorrow, which is today when this comes out, and again next week. So we'll have a few more coming up over the next couple of weeks. Really interested to hear their stories. But today, as a couple of you have asked for, I've got one or two of my stories that are a little bit more out there and wacky. So how did I go from being a very working class lad, going to a regular state school, to traveling the world, working with massive theatre companies, working on a Olivier Award winning show, and just doing what I love for most of my career? How does that even happen? Well, where do we start? As I mentioned before, wasn't raised in a particularly wealthy family. We were pretty poor, to be fair. I remember having holes in my shoes and having cheese sandwiches for dinner. Mum was working 2 jobs, and Graham, who was my stepfather, the man that raised me, was also working a couple of jobs just to kind of make ends meet. And I remember seeing on Blue Peter, of all things, for those that aren't from around here, Blue Peter is a children's TV show, used to be on every weeknight. I saw a gymnastic display team, and they were doing flips off trapeze and doing double somersaults and all sorts. And I'm like, oh, I like that. And it turned out that they were based out of a school quite nearby to where we lived. I wasn't in the catchment area for that school, though. And the school was Chelmer Valley High School, which is in Chelmsford, Essex. So we looked into if it were possible to go there. It was quite a good school academically. It wasn't just for the gymnastic team, but it was a bit of a draw. And I was excited and enthusiastic to go to this high school. So we applied, and I had to have an interview. Someone had to come to the school. So from my point of view, this school was a prestigious school because I had to jump through some hoops to get there. And I was over the moon when I found out that I'd got into Chelmer Valley High School. And when I got there for my first day, age 11, in September of 1994, I was a little bit surprised because not everyone was excited as me to be here at this school. Because for a lot of these people, it was the school in their catchment area and they just went there. But for me, this was something special. This was an achievement to go to this school. There's a real disconnect there between myself and some other people. And I think going to school and feeling like I'd achieved something just getting there, even though it was a regular state school, it was just not in my area, made me appreciate the school a little bit more. It was a good school. You know, it just had a new headmaster, and it had a display team, and it had far more computers than a lot of other schools. They were quite progressive and ahead of their time back then, having a couple of computers with CD-ROM drives. We had a computer that was connected to the internet, which just wasn't a thing back then. And I'll never forget, I guess this was really one of those moments that changed my life, looking for Mr. Ford, who was in charge of the gymnastic display team, the Blue Falcons gymnastic display team. Multiple Guinness World Record holders. They'd been on You Bet. They'd been on Blue Peter. I was excited. So understandably, I went to the PE department. I said, hi, I'm looking for Mr. Ford, 11 years old, bag on my back, blazer done up. And they said, oh, he's in the technology department. Why is the man who runs the gymnastic team in the technology department? So I've toddled over to the technology department. And I've knocked on the office door. I was like, excuse me, I'm looking for Mr. Ford. And this stern man, Barnsley accent and a moustache, turns around. Yes? I said, about the Blue Falcons. He went, what about it, boy? And I was terrified because Mick Ford was not a man to be trifled with. And he said that tryouts would be later in the term and an announcement would be made and to be patient. Okay, so off I've toddled. And it wasn't long before, during our morning lineup, he'd come round and announce to everyone that the tryouts for the Blue Falcons were coming up and they were going to do things a little bit differently this year. And we had to go along, and I went. It was Wednesday nights for our tryouts, and we had to go through this rigorous training process where we were learning forward rolls and learning to do some jumps and bouncing on the trampette and learning to do dive rolls and things. And they were assessing us and keeping an eye on us and looking for people with the right attitude. And I guess one of the things that really helped me was that while I wasn't from a well-off background, we were poor, but my parents really cared and really supported and really encouraged me to do things like this. Because I was an only child, it did help. You know, I have to acknowledge it was beneficial to me and my life that I was an only child, and my parents really, really took an interest in what I did and cared. And I know that that's not the case for everyone, and I have to accept that. At some level, that's my privilege, but we certainly didn't have any money. So they came along. Mum and Graham would help out with the gymnastic team. Now, this was for no other reason than they wanted to be involved in what I was doing. They weren't interested in gymnastics. And as a result, because they needed a few more supporters, the main team practiced on a Monday night. We were doing our tryouts on a Wednesday, and the main team practiced on a Monday night. So Mum and Graham said, well, we can help on a Monday as well. So we went along, and I was sitting there watch what the older ones do. And it wasn't long before they needed someone to jump into one of the teams. It's like, oh, Brad, do you wanna have a go? Yeah. So even though I was still in tryouts for the team, I was getting that access to and exposure to, and it wasn't deliberate on anyone's part, but I just happened to be there. I was seen to be keen and enthusiastic and trying hard, and I wasn't the best gymnast at all, not at this stage. So I had a go, and that put me in good stead, and they'd seen that I could perform with the team, and the routines were quite intricate, and it's far more military gymnastic style, and I'd had a go. I'm like, great. So I'd go along on a Monday night, and I'd never expect to be asked to have a go, but it became the fact that more Mondays than not, I would be having a go and be joining with the main team. So when we got in the tryouts, it was a difficult one. It was the first year they'd ever done this, and they said that the quality of applicants this year has been so good. Anyone who wasn't really into it had kind of dropped out during the process because it was quite tough. Mick Ford was a military man. It was tough. And we got to the end of the selection process, and they said, we're actually going to start a junior team. We're going to start the fledgling Falcons of the Blue Falcons Gymnastics Play Team. And we were the fledglings. And I guess I was a little bit disappointed because I thought, I want to be in the main team. I don't want to be in this junior team and do another year of this. But I didn't have to wait too long because I was kind of inducted into the main team, was joining with the main team as well. A couple of us were, myself and a girl named Sarah were also, because we were showing a level of enthusiasm and really wanting it to be allowed into the main team. And that was it. That was my life. The Blue Falcons Gymnastics Play Team was my life for, I don't know how long. I mean, this team only shut down last year, which was 2023. I joined in 1994. And through my school days, that was my tribe. That was my family. That was my thing that I did. And we would train on a Monday and a Wednesday and Saturday mornings. And that was it. It was about skills acquisition and about doing the shows all summer. So performing arena displays. It wasn't a competitive gymnastic team. We did shows. We did performances. So by the time I was 12 years old, I'd appeared at the Royal Tournament in front of 25,000 people. And we did the last run of the Royal Tournament. I've still got my medal here, which was 1997 Royal Tournament medal. It lives on my desk. And I've got my award from the Blue Falcons for outstanding achievement and outstanding achievement to the team. So these things really matter to me. They're there on my desk. I look at them every single day, every day. But by having that exposure to gymnastics and doing all of this gymnastics, it meant that I got good at doing flips and handstands. And I ended up being one of the team leaders and kind of, without a great understanding of how the team worked, that was quite an accolade. It was like being the team captain, if you like. And I grew up with the team, and it was the most important thing to me. But having gone to that school and not knowing anyone else there, just jumping back a little bit, I didn't go into the school with any friends or any social circle. And I was there because I thought it was a good school academically, and I wanted to be in the gymnastic team. That was my reason for going there, which wasn't the same reason as some of them. And there were some areas of Chelmsford that were served by Chelmer Valley High School that were not great areas. So the kids there from areas of economic deprivation, there were kids from very low income families, there were kids that were involved in sort of crime and antisocial behavior, which blew my mind. I didn't think it would be that kind of school. So it was a hard sell for me, who had not come from that background at all. And I remember there were a couple of times when you kind of get your lunch tray and you're looking around the dinner hall for somewhere to sit. And some of the older boys from the gymnastic team would call me over, Bradley, come and sit with us. And the social credibility that gives you when you're a slightly geeky 11 or 12-year-old to be called over by people who are a bit more cool and a little bit older, that was amazing. And it did a lot for my confidence, and it made me feel like I was looked after. It made me feel like I belonged. And in talking to my guests over the last several weeks, that's something that really matters, is that feeling of belonging. Like, people need somewhere to belong. They need to find their tribe. And if you don't feel that you belong, you'll probably try and find other people who don't belong. And that can be quite a negative place to be, but with a whole bunch of people whose tribe is people who don't belong or people who are unhappy. And that's not where we want young people to be. We want them to feel appreciated and part of something positive. So that was school. I had that social credibility of being looked after by the slightly older ones. I was in the gymnastic team, and by the time I was kind of the running one of the groups, it was quite cool to be part of the gymnastics team. We do shows, and we were allowed to go on some school trips in our gymnastic kit rather than school uniform. It was a big deal to be part of that. I've held 4 Guinness World Records, currently hold 2, the most vaults in an hour and the most somersaults through a hoop in 60 seconds, which is a whole nother story. And the most vaults in an hour is 10 people running around with a springboard and a vault horse, vault over, run round, vault over, run round. And it's the equivalent of running about 10K in an hour, and in that time, every 10 seconds, vaulting over something. That's about the pace you're running at. So it was tiring. We trained hard. We took it very seriously. And we've broken that record twice since, and I've been in the team that's broken it both times. So we set the vault record at 4,090 volts, which is a lot. We then broke it again, and we broke it the last time in, I think, 2013 with a number of 6,250 volts, which is a lot of volts to do in an hour. That's about the 10K pace, or a little bit more than, because some of the volts weren't counted through incorrect hand placement and things. So we're very, very proud of that. And during school, I was also interested in the theatre, but I didn't get to really do any of the school shows because I wasn't a singer. They used to do musicals. So I'd help out backstage and I'd be involved in whatever I wanted. And I did a GCSE and I did A-level in drama and theatre studies. So I was interested in it. But as I wasn't a singer and the school did a lot of musicals, I didn't really engage with that in the same way. But I did want to get involved in film and television. I wanted to get involved in stunts. So for my 17th birthday, Mum and Graham got me the access to the combat stunt course, which was a weekend away in a gymnastic gym. And we learned stage combat, basics of fighting. We were learning acting technique. We were learning how to fall downstairs, how to do high falls, all of these things that really made you understand what it was to be a stunt person, a stunt performer. And the acting was crucial to that. And through that little circle of people, I got involved in doing some extra work here and there. So I had been on film sets and I'd been involved in TV and film and had an understanding that you didn't have to be a singer to be involved in the theatre, which is good because I'm not a singer. And I got to 18 and I wanted to get out and see some of the world. So I signed up for Camp America. And the Camp America program was a good program at the time, in that you pay a fee. It covers pretty much just your flights and some admin fees. And then they give you basically your pocket money back at the end of the summer. So it's not a huge amount of money, but a lot of the arrangement is done for you. The visa applications, all that's done for you, which getting to the States was quite challenging. So I went and worked out there. Summer 2001, I was 18, flew out to New York. And anyone who's familiar with contemporary history will understand 2001 was an interesting year. So after I'd finished working and we had a bit of an extension on our visa to do some traveling, was 9/11. So I got a photo of myself at the top of the World Trade Center on the 7th of September, 2001. And it was a weird time. We didn't have social media. In fact, we were trying to arrange ourselves and my friends by email. We go to internet cafes because no one had email on the phones. Phones were for texting and calling only, and no internet on them. And we'd arranged some silly things that summer. So I went to the WWE, I think it was WWF back then, a bar in New York, and speaking to the manager and told him that we were the British under-25s rugby team and we wanted a table for the following night, and then had to round up all the guys I'd worked with on camp to try and get them to come to this bar. And we didn't pay for a drink all night because they thought we were the touring rugby team, and we were very, really well looked after. It was a great fun night. You can't do silly blags like that anymore because it's all about social media, but we had to arrange ourselves via internet cafe. And I think I was emailing one of the guys once in the internet cafe, Easy Everything in Times Square. And he was actually at the other side of the internet cafe at the same time. I could have just shouted. No group chats, no nothing like that. So anyway, it was a fun summer. Obviously on the 11th of September 2001, planes hit the towers and the towers went down. And I'd flown out of New York on I think it was the 9th of September. And I was in West Palm Beach. I was just there sleeping in a hostel, West Palm Beach. And my mum's frantically phoning me up asking, "Are you okay?" And then the phone's died and I've got some texts and what's going on? So I turned on the telly just in time to see the second tower fall, which was, I'll never forget that. I'm like, whoa, we were there a couple of days ago. And my friends wanted to carry on traveling. I'm like, no, I just want to go home. So we've jumped on the bus as early as we could. And we're told that the state lines are closed. We're not going to get out of Florida, but we want to go north. So we've gone up to to Florida, so the North Florida, and the borders have opened. So we've continued up the I-95 up as far north as we can get. We're told there's absolutely no way anyone's going to be able to get into Washington, D.C. because the Pentagon was hit as well. And we got closer to Washington and the bus was allowed in. And we swapped buses and we carried on going north. We were told there's no way, absolutely not a possibility that anyone's going to be getting onto Manhattan Island. I was like, well, my return ticket is only valid from New York Airport. So I need to get to New York. I have to get to New York because I want to go home. So we got there and it was open. We got across the bridge and the plume of smoke was there where the towers were. And it was just drifting slightly north up Manhattan Island. I'll never forget that. It's like burned in here where the towers were that I'd been up previous week. Are just not there anymore. It was really an odd time. So my friends wanted to carry on traveling. They went up to Boston. I think I've still got my ticket to Boston. I should probably go back at some point. And I went and holed myself up in a hotel and read Spider-Man comics for a few days and flew home on the 16th of September 2001. Probably the safest flight we'd ever had. Virgin Atlantic had sent over a load of flights to pick up the backlog of all the closures. Obviously, the airlines were closed for a few days. And that was it. I got home and I went back to gymnastics. I walked into gymnastics, walked into the hall the following Monday and got a round of applause because no one knew where I was or what I was doing, just that I was in New York and there'd been this attack. Once again, I'd come home. I continued traveling. I worked in the States 2002, 2003, made my own arrangements. I didn't go through Camp America again. I was out there as an employee with a temporary work visa, and did a lot of things, spending my money traveling and get my scuba diving qualifications, which is amazing. And I spent a few weeks just scuba diving several times a day off the coast of Florida. Absolutely amazing. Swimming with sharks and fish. And it was just because that was the money that I'd made working on camp, because you don't really spend anything when you're on camp. Your food's covered, your accommodation's covered. If you're sensible with your money, you can have a chunk of change at the end of the summer and do some traveling. So that's what I did. And then after 2003, I was 20, turning 21 in 2004, and kind of a bit drifting. I'd had a couple of girlfriends, and one of the girlfriends hadn't wanted me to kind of disappear back off to America for a few months, so I didn't, because that's the kind of thing you do when you're 20. And a lot of my friends did. A lot of people had a really good experience in 2004. I didn't. I not in camp anyway. I took up skateboarding, and I met Jamie, who was one of my previous guests. And I was kind of working a few jobs that I didn't really have any passion for or interest in, but it paid the bills. And I went skateboarding as much as possible. And I was at the skate park one day and saw some kids jumping around trying to do flips on the grass by the skate park. So I ran over and, being the show off that I am, did a couple of flips. And they're like, wow, that's amazing. Where'd you learn to do that? I was like, I've been doing gymnastics for, at this point, close to 10 years. Like, oh, could you show us? So these guys, I took them to the gymnastic gym, which was over in Harlow. There's another gymnastic gym I trained at, and I went to Adult Open Gym, and they got to use foam pits and sprung floors, which they hadn't necessarily used before. And they took me to London, and I met the London parkour scene and got involved in that. And suddenly I was like, wow, this is something I'm into. I see people jumping on and off of things, and then the TV show aired on Channel 4, which was Jump Britain, and parkour and free running became kind of household names briefly. And I was a little bit older than the other guys, and I was regularly going to parkour meets on Sundays on the South Bank in London, and got a bit of a name for myself, and people knew me because I don't do anything by halves. I was still doing gymnastics, and I was training other gymnastic gyms, and I was getting involved in parkour as well. And I loved it. I really loved it. I still wanted to work in TV and film, but really I was still living at home with my parents, unsure really what I was doing with myself. I'd done my traveling. I didn't have the money to do that anymore. And, I was a bit lost. And getting involved in parkour kind of led to, we were scouted by Britain's Got Talent. Britain's Got Talent is a TV talent competition like the X Factor or Pop Idol or something, but you can do anything. So it's variety. It's supposed to be British variety. And they headhunted us. I was working in an office at the time, and I remember telling a couple of the girls in the office, we've been asked to do this Britain's Got Talent thing. And this girl was arguing with me, telling me, no one gets asked to do those things. You've got to apply. I was like, well, no, I've just spoken to the producer, and they said they've had too many singing acts because X Factor has been such a thing for so many years. Would we do it? So I said yes, because you do when you're working in an office and skateboarding and free running at the weekends and living in your parents' spare bedroom. So we went and did this audition, took a springboard that I'd borrowed from the gym, and did a flip over one of the guys. We did some tricks in this little studio, and yeah, we like it. And they did some filming with us. And then we went back for the judges rounds, and it did the rounds. We did quite well on that because I'd asked Ant and Dec, who are the two presenters of that show, to come on stage with us. We'd choreographed our piece with like salt and pepper pots in a cafe around the corner. I've got a lot of stories we could tell about Britain's Got Talent, but I don't want to upset, the people at Fremantle or Psycho or or Sony BMG or whoever's running that thing now. So I'll keep it brief. But we hadn't got anything prepared. We were going to go on stage in a theatre. And I'm like, what are we going to do on stage? So, and we heard one of the previous acts, a little girl dressed as Bo Peep, came running off stage crying. And the audience were booing her. Like, we got to get something sorted out. We can't just go out there and do some flips because that's bad. So we went and, salt and pepper, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And on a complete whim, I saw Ant and Dec there in the wings. I said, can we use you guys? When I'd normally jump over him, but can you come out as well? And they're like, yeah, sure, let us know. So after that, I did a flip over Ant and Dec, and that was in the center pages of Heat magazine. That photo did the rounds. That was one of their marketing things that year, 2007, the first year of Britain's Got Talent. And the other thing that we were known for was, and they didn't know we were doing this, I'd scouted out how to get up to one of the balconies, out to one of the boxes. Now, the box in the theatre didn't have any people in it. It had some speaker stacks in it. And I'd gone up there and I told Ash, who was our group, you go up that corridor. It's the second door on the left. One of them's locked, one of them's not. You go in there and you'll be in the balcony, because he wanted to jump off the balcony. Obviously hadn't prepped or rehearsed this. The producers didn't know we were doing it. So after I flipped over Ant and Dec and the audience is going nuts, we've pointed up and there's this guy jumping out the balcony. He wanted to make it to the stage. If you see the footage, he jumps straight down and the camera shakes as he lands. It was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So we got through to the next round. We got through to the live rounds, and got through to the last 25 acts, and like 9 million people watched our semi-final. We beat The Apprentice. So that's how you go from being a really working class guy who went to a school that did gymnastics to being on primetime TV and being watched by 9 million people. It was a wild ride. It was a really wild ride. And I look back now and it just seems like a dream. We weren't very well prepared for the semi-final round, and the production company didn't really give us as much as we wanted. That's an easy excuse to make, but there was a time that they asked us if we do it with our shirts off, and we were kind of like, no, that's not really what we want to do. And it might be a coincidence, but suddenly we didn't get as much studio time. We didn't get to do the breakfast TV interviews. We didn't get to speak to the papers. Like, okay, there's probably something there, but it wasn't a very good act. And they did say, it's not dangerous enough. You need the risk of death, which I'll take that. But parkour is a good spectator sport, far more than it is a competitive sport. So that was Britain's Got Talent. And off the back of that, we got involved in some corporate entertainment and doing some traveling. And we did a trade show for Caterpillar footwear, the boots. They'd started making trainers for other areas of the world. And I got chatting to some of their team, like the bigwigs in the industry, in this particular business. And they liked us. So they asked me if I would, potentially go on a retainer. And I was on a retainer through Caterpillar. They paid me, I think, something in the region of like £1,000 a month just to be their athlete and not to work for other shoe companies. And then they send me care packages and I test out shoes for them. I haven't designed my own shoes, which I've got one pair of somewhere. So I've got a pair of shoes that I designed for parkour that are just mine. There's one pair in existence. And that was amazing. That was incredible that I'm being flown around. I went to Chicago, and I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, up at their factory, and I was doing photo shoots for them. We're doing fashion trade shows. We were on the catwalk in these beautiful, amazing resort in Portugal. There's a video that I like to use of me doing a handstand on a dam in Portugal. That was that week when we were doing this fashion trade show, and we got put up in the best hotels. And I remember being there in this like hot tub with waitress service bringing us beers or hot chocolates or cakes or whatever we wanted. And we were like, oh guys, this is it. We've made it. And that was around 2008, 2009, which was the global financial crisis, and unfortunately, they dropped all their athletes worldwide. They dropped all of their athletes because even companies that had money couldn't be seen to be spending it. And I'll never forget, we were doing another corporate event. We were opening a massive law firm in central London. I was talking to another performer, and he was like, "What do you think of this, like this recession or this credit crunch or this thing that's happening?" I was like, "Well, it won't affect us, will it? Like, we're doing Christmas parties for like the biggest banks in the world. These people aren't going to go bust. We're opening these massive law firms. These people aren't going to go bust." And as it happened, the corporate market did dry up. So I went from doing huge corporate events like that and traveling up and down the country and all around the world, in fact, to, right, what do we do now? I didn't have any money saved because I'd only been doing it a couple of years. And like I said, all the companies that, even the ones that had money at that point, couldn't be seen to be spending it because, there were global financial problems. So I started teaching. I was contacted by some local authorities. They'd seen us and seen our stuff. Could we teach what we do? Like, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I also was approached by a London drama school. And that was a fun one. That was a really fun one. I really enjoyed teaching there. It was a great experience and got me more immersed in theatre and professional theatre. And there weren't many people at that time who were involved in parkour and gymnastics who were a little bit older. And the drama school had contacted me directly because they'd found my contact online, asking if I would do this. They contacted two other people, at least two other people. There's two that I know of, but two other people, asking if they could recommend anyone who's involved in the teaching of parkour and gymnastics. Both of these people recommended me. So this drama school has got like, yes, I'll do it, and two other recommendations that they don't know are my friends. But there weren't many people in my position at that time. And this is about the time that my parents, Mum and Graham, had separated. And I was reading these emails on my laptop in the car park outside my old house where Graham was currently living, because I could still connect to the Wi-Fi because we didn't have Wi-Fi at home. Because that's kind of where things had got to. So it was an interesting time. And I went and taught at this drama school, and I was taught there for a lot of years. I think I was there for about 9 years. And in that time, I just continued to increase my knowledge. If I was able to get involved in a project, I did. I learned far more about stage combat. I learned more about acting. Even though I was a member of staff there, being involved in the projects and going to watch a lot of theatre and just being immersed in it helps you. And I'm the kind of person that likes to learn things anyway. So I'd learn terminology, I'd learn techniques, and I'd join in with some of the classes where I could. And it was really, really educational for me. And I was, being paid to be there and also getting some of this drama school education, like big, proper London drama school education. And one of the heads of course said to me, "Oh, Brad, I need someone to go into a theatre and teach someone how to do some falls. Is that something you can do?" And I said, yeah, sure. That's kind of what I do. So I was introduced to one of the biggest opera houses one of the biggest theatre in the West End, but one of the biggest opera houses in the world, to do some falls with them. And I've now been working with the English National Opera for 14 years. I've worked with the likes of Glenn Close. I've worked with Emma Thompson, Alfie Boe, Catherine Jenkins, Michael Ball. I've worked with all of these people, and it's been such a magnificent experience. I've worked on shows that have gone on to win Olivier Awards. And it really came from one thing. And this is really the take home here, because this podcast is supposed to be about helping people get on. When I went for that interview at the drama school, I was woefully unqualified for the job. Yeah, they'd had a couple of recommendations, but I hadn't taught a higher education institute before. I only had A-levels to my name. And even then, that was a few years before. So I'm 25 and I've gone in, and I've got there a little bit early. I've gone and grabbed a coffee and a bacon roll in the cafe. And as I'm going into the cafe, trying to get the lie of the land, I held the door open for this man who was behind me, which I always do. As a thing, I hold doors open for people because it's a nice thing to do. He said, "Thank you, young man," and went on in. And I sat and had my coffee and my bacon roll. And I went in for my interview. And who's interviewing me? It's the guy I held the door open for. And he's like, "You're the young man who held the door open for me." I said, yeah. I had the job before he'd even asked me a question. And that doesn't always happen, but I'd made a good I'd made a good first impression, and I'd been recommended, so I had that job. We went for a walk around the grounds, which were beautiful, and we looked at the facilities, and the job was mine. And that's where I worked then for several years afterwards, over several courses. And it was the same man who put me in touch with this opera house. about doing some work for them. So it was really holding a door open for someone earned me tens of thousands of pounds just for holding a door open for someone. I didn't know that at the time, but it's worth doing these things. And opera was kind of working in opera was one of the things that really sticks with me. There were some rubbish times in my life, and there are some good times in my life. And I've been in that auditorium working on shows, thick and thin. And I can think of a show and know whether it brings back a happy or a sad memory. And there was a really rough time in my life, which was in the beginning of 2019. And I'd been working on Porgy and Bess, which is a fantastic opera, amazing. And I'd set most of the opening scene. There's a big violent interaction and some crowds and there's a fight. And I'd walked into the room and the director had gone, "Okay, Brad, the room's yours." And I'm stood there and there's like cast of 50 looking at me. And I'm so glad that I prepped the hell out of that, because it was all written down and I set them and directed it. And I ran a three-hour rehearsal setting this scene. And there were like 14 Tony Awards in that room, like some of the most accomplished opera singers in the world and some of the best opera stars that America's got. So we did that, and that show then went on to Amsterdam, and I was invited out to Amsterdam to the Dutch National Opera. And something happened one weekend in January in 2019, and that was my then wife left me. Now that's a whole nother story, but the crux was on Friday night she came home and she's like, "I'm leaving you." So that wasn't great. And on the Sunday night, same weekend, a very good friend of mine took his own life. And because I'd been so, self-absorbed in my wife having just left me, I didn't say goodbye to him properly on the Saturday. Wife's left me on the Friday night. I've gone to work on the Saturday and I saw him and I was just like, "Oh, see you next week." I never got to say a proper goodbye to him. And that really, it bothers me. So that was a rubbish weekend. That was a really rubbish weekend. And on the Monday, so the day after he took his own life, dealing with that, had to go to a funeral for one of Graham's best friends. So it was a rough week. And while driving to the funeral, I had to call a lot of our mutual friends to let them know that that person wasn't with us anymore, because someone had to tell them. So I'm driving to a funeral, telling other people that one of their friends has died. It was really hard. And I was in a bit of a fog for most of 2019. But I say that because I was working on Porgy and Bess and I got invited out to Amsterdam. And on the Wednesday of that week, I went to Amsterdam and working at the Dutch National Opera. And we were rehearsing all day, partying all night. And it was one of those, it was good. I was working, but it was a bit self-destructive. And we were really partying hard. Not sleeping at all. I think I even fell asleep in one of the rehearsals. There was a bed on the set, and in the breaks in rehearsal, I would go and have a little cat nap on the bed that was on set. But that show really helped me have a focus to deal with what was a really, really tough time. Really, I don't know what I'd have done had I not had that thing to concentrate on in that show. And that show went on to win an Olivier Award. So, we did really, really work hard on it. Porgy and Bess in Amsterdam is also one of my favorite opera stories because we had an American director and we're performing it in Europe. And in a lot of European countries, stage left and stage right are the other way around. So for those that aren't involved in the theatre, when you're standing on stage looking out, it's your left and right. So stage right is over there, stage left is over there. That's not always the case in European theatres. So the production team, myself included, I'm stood there in a suit, have been told, the director's been told, okay, we're going to walk on stage. Now we are currently stage left as far as I'm concerned. And they've been told, right, we're going to go on and we're going to walk on the line and we're going to be from center to stage right. The director's at the front. So the director and the musical director are supposed to walk on and they stop center stage. And then the rest of us peter out. And I'm going to be in the wings because I'm one of the least important people there, doing fights and falls and some additional choreography. The director's like, well, we need to be stage right to the middle. That's what I've been told. So he walks all the way across stage, right over to the other wings, which is, as far as we're concerned, stage right, leaving me the center stage in between the principals, and the girls come out in their ball gowns and they hand me some flowers. I've got photos of me and one of the staff directors holding these flowers, and they're like, they must think that we're the director and the MD. This is brilliant. Took a standing ovation to 1,200 people holding these flowers center stage. So it wasn't all bad week, but that was an interesting one. So thank you, Porgy and Bess, and congratulations. That cast deserved that Olivier Award. It was the Olivier Award for the best ensemble, and they were phenomenal, like amazing. And that kind of takes us up to the modern day. That's what I'm working on now. I'm still working in opera, and the English National Opera have had a bit of a rough ride recently with funding and things, and I'm still working with them. And they've got an amazing team there, and the E&O chorus are superb. The E&O orchestra are superb. All of the people that work there are just lovely. And I've said before in other interviews that the higher up you get in these things, the nicer people are. You don't get stage managers snapping at people. You don't get people backstage rowing with each other. Occasionally there's some egos in the performers, but everyone in that theatre are just so lovely and just really, really good at what they do. And Alex, in one of our interviews, alluded to like surrounding yourself in excellence if you want to be excellent. And I agree with that. Surrounding yourself by people that are driven, motivated, and very, very good at what they do is a great way of making sure you're going to be very good at what you do. Rising up rather than ripping other people down if you feel inadequate. How do you make yourself better? You surround yourself by people that are excellent. Surround yourself by the people that you want to be like. So by surrounding myself with people who are amazing and excellent and wonderful, that's what I hope to achieve. I know there's been a bit of an interesting episode this week. Like I said, the interviews are coming back. That's how I went from growing up in a poor working class family to traveling around the world, working in professional performances and corporate entertainment and getting world records and Olivier Awards and all sorts. So that's it. If you want to do it, get out and do it. And the answer is always yes. If someone says, can you do this? Yeah. And then work out how to do it later. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. See you next week.